Hey YouTube, what is up? We are back with episode 2 of this Designing the Cube series around my new idea, my Take 5 cube, which if you haven't seen episode 1, I recommend checking that out. I will link it in the description down below, and that just explains the overall concept of this cube and the inspirations for it. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about the stage we're at, which is the spaghetti wall stage. We have a lot of spaghetti on the wall. My goal was to get above 360 cards so I could cut down to a playable 360 to start drafting. And as you can see, we are at 670 cards. I'm in that phase of the cube design where I'm just so excited and I can't stop thinking about it. And every minute of the day, I'm going through Scryfall and finding other cube lists that are inspiring and just pulling cards and dumping them in a pile here. That's what I've done. This is a huge pile of cards. Obviously, most of these we're not going to see play in the final version of the cube. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through this list together. I want to talk about some of the themes and ideas I've identified that I'm excited about. And we're actually going to tag some cards. I want to tag cards that are going to be what I usually call like focal points, or the focuses of the different inspirations, sort of pillars maybe of the different parts of the cube. And once we've identified those, we might use them to start making some cuts. It might be the next video. The next video might be cuts based on those pillars. But really today I just want to go through and talk about what I found and where I think I'm headed. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the first thing here that I'm going to use as a pillar. I did really like this cartographer's hawk example somebody did. Yes, this is a cool one. Someone brought this sort of idea of being able to search for a plane with a cartographer's hawk or an idea waiter is very cool. Let's call Oswald Fiddlebender the first focus card. And let's I've also been, where possible, I've been noting who recommended cards in the notes so that if you recommend a card in the comments, you might get referenced here in the notes for all time. Let's pick an emoji for this. I guess you can't see my emoji window here. Focus. What should this be? I want something that's like probably an icon. What should the emoji be? I'm setting up the first version of this tag, and I'm going to save the changes with one version of the tag so that it auto-completes. And for those who don't know, there's an emoji tag feature on CubeCobra where if you start a tag with an emoji, what about the crown? No, not the crown. If you start a tag with an emoji, then you can check a little box that will display those emojis inline on the cube view, which I love this feature. I've been using it just religiously. Let's go with this star for now. All right. I'm going to make that tag, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this change because now that tag will autocomplete if I want, and then you can go to display, show inline emoji tags. You can see right here, Oswald Fiddlebender, we have that sort of tag. So that's what we're going to use. Oswald Fiddlebender, this is basically a birthing pod for artifacts, which is exactly the kind of thing I want this cube to do for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's going to be a big artifact theme because as we talked about, we're only making 5 cuts, which means that you have to play a lot of cards in your main deck, which means I want to give people a lot of main deckable cards. A lot of artifacts are colorless, and colorless cards can, by virtue of their colorlessness, be played in any deck. So there's going to be a artifact theme, especially a like kind of trinkety artifact theme. And so this is the perfect example of being able to sacrifice a 1 mana value artifact to get a 2 or a 3 for a 4 is exactly what I expect decks to be doing. This also puts artifact into play without casting it, which means that if you have a color artifact you otherwise can't cast, you can still fiddle bend into it, which brings me to the next card I definitely want to label as a focus, which is, of course, actual, man, there's so many colorless cards here. Actual birthing pod itself. This is for sure a focus. That tag auto-completes now. Yeah, this is great in every single way. This is a card people, I think, love in cubes. It's an aspirational build-around, but I think in most cubes it's actually pretty bad. So here, we're playing at a lower power level. I want these decks to be a little bit janky. I think this can actually be a appealing, really strong card. It also does a couple other things I really like. Obviously, just like Oswald, it allows you to put a creature into play without casting it, which means you can put off-color cards in your deck, which is cool and is in line with the sort of theme of making very minimal cuts and having to play sort of fringe cards. It also, the Phyrexian mana is a big plus for me here because I imagine these decks are going to be kind of janky. I want life totals to be ticking down slowly over time as part of the gameplay normally. So this just checks every single box. Birthing Pod is like the perfect focus for this cube. That brings me to the next focus, which is life loss. So I'm not going to bother marking too many lands as focuses, but there's a couple that I do want to note here. City of Brass, I could also add Mana Confluence. I might as well just do that right now. I'm going to add Mana Confluence because, not Mana Conference, that's stupid. Mana Confluence is going to get in here as well. But even more than that, Tarnished Citadel. This is the perfect type of card for this cube because it has colorless for free, but you can tap it for any color for 3 damage, which is a really steep cost, but I want the sort of cost of playing many colors to be steep, but I want you to have the option to do it, right? Like, I don't want you to just not be able to make colored mana, so you can't play these cards in your deck. I want you to be able to splash, but to have to pay a steep cost for it. And so Tarnished Citadel is actually perfect, even more so than City of Brass. I love Tarnished Citadel for this cube, so that one is getting a focus as well, because I do want life totals to be ticking down, as I mentioned. So, the first couple focuses here, small artifacts, Birthing Pod. I think searching your library is going to be pretty common in this cube, and both these cards put cards into play without having to cast them, which is great for off-color stuff. Let's keep moving here for other cards that are going to be potential focuses, and Auriok Salvagers, definitely a focus. I knew from the very early days, I think I even mentioned in the first version of this video, that I want Auriok Salvagers to be a card that makes sense in this cube. Importantly, I think I'm not going to include Lionside Diamond, which is the card that goes infinite with Auriok Salvagers. I do, generally speaking, love the Bomberman combo. I think it's very cool because your outlet can be a lot of different things, but this cube is definitely going to have like Pyrite Spellbomb and a bunch of cheap sort of trinkety artifacts in it, so drawing your whole deck and making infinite mana will be pretty trivially easy with that combo, and I don't want people to be playing Auriok Salvagers and just looking for Lionside Diamond in this cube. I don't want the kind of combos that people will just look for A and B sides. I want them to be looking for creative, improvisational ways to combine these cards with other cards. So Salvagers is in here because I want you to combine it with other stuff. Tashar, I think, is also going to be a focus. It's a similar payoff to Auriok Salvagers. I hate when the name of the card is too long. You can't see the emoji. I should put in a feature request that the emoji cut off the name, but always be visible. Small thing. Yeah, both very similar payoffs, but that's definitely the direction my white section is going. We're going to talk about Spell Shapers later. Well, let's talk about them right now. I don't know whether I'm fully committed to a Spell Shaper being a focus card yet, but the Spell Shapers are cards that turn cards in your hand into spells. This Majida the Lion casts effectively Wrath of God by discarding 2 cards and paying the mana cost. It keeps itself in play. This is a very cool card that I really like. Is this specific Spell Shaper going to be a focus? I'm not sure, but there's definitely going to be some Spell Shapers in this cube, I can say with confidence, because let's actually jump to the one I know I'm going to include. This is another Bones recommendation here. Green Seeker. Great example of like mana fixing, as long as you've drafted basic lands for 80 different colors, and also a discard outlet for cards you can't cast. So we are going to be all about Green Seeker in this cube, I think, for sure. But yeah, the Spell Shapers are as discard outlets for spells you can't cast, and ones that have spell-like effects are exactly the kind of thing I want to be seeking in this cube. So definitely include some combination of Spell Seekers, and again, for Spell Shapers rather. And for right now, again, Spaghetti at the Wall stage, I've just dumped all of them basically in here. Although I looked at all the Spell Shapers and found all the ones I thought were fringe playable or maybe had some application, and that's where I got Majida the Lion from. This is also a card I just love and remember playing as a kid. 5 mana 3/3 is kind of where I think I'm at in terms of like what I want the like fair power level to be here. So maybe this is a Majida the Lion cube, but I would say it's on the fringe right now. These other cards I'm not fully committed to. I do really want the eggs deck to be a thing. I don't know how many of these. Let's make them all focuses. Why not? We're gonna make, not foe. We're gonna make these all focus cards for now, just because it's gonna help us look at the list and see what we like and what we want to, choose the rest of our cards around. And I do love the Second Sunrise cards. We're gonna have so many trinkety artifacts. I definitely want that to be a deck. Spin's Reclamation, also for sure getting in here. Another way to, I've mentioned this one again in the first video, another way to put permanents into play you don't have to pay their mana value for. Prismatic Ending is exactly the kind of removal I want here. I ended up adding a bunch of other Converge cards. I'll go flag those in a second. But again, this is a great example of where I want this sort of Tarnished Citadel to come into play. You have to draft your whole mana base here, and I don't want lands to be, scarce. I don't want you to have to worry about like hitting 17 or 16 lands for your deck and not having a playable deck. But I do want colors to be kind of something you have to fight for. And so this card is not just going to be, it will still be a good removal spell. It's just a great card. But here, in this particular environment, getting to many colors for Converge might be somewhat difficult, is my goal at least. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark this as a focus as well. A couple other Converge cards I'm really excited about. Painful Truths, another great example of, I think, making bread and butter effects like card draw be something that are thematic to the cube. Making multiple colors of mana is going to be hard to do here. And then this also loses UX life. Again, I love life totals just constantly ticking down. That's the thing about my tasting cube. I also love Radiant Flames for the same reason. The color reason, obviously, it's not taking life totals down. This is an awesome sort of Pyroclasm-esque effect where you can control the size of it. So you can, depending on what colors of mana you can produce, you can cast this to deal 1 to each creature, 2 to each creature, or 3 to each creature. 1, if you have, some bigger creatures or your opponent has some tokens, can be kind of one-sided. And then 3 is like going to be mostly a full board wipe, all the biggest threats. And so I love Radiant Flames here. The Converge stuff is generally speaking great. While we're talking Converge, we should also talk about Sunburst, which is similar. I love Engineering Explosives. This is a great Engineering Explosives cube. And Sunburst, I think, is a really good mechanic. They're actually basically exactly the same. Comes to play with a charge counter. Yeah, so Sunburst just specifically puts counters on things for the colors meant to cast it, and Converge is more flexible. But in this sort of context, Converge and Sunburst are going to be basically the same mechanic, which if I cared about elegance for this cube, I would dislike. But I'm going to have a high tolerance for complexity in this particular cube because I have other simple cubes. This is the cube for doing really funky stuff. Funky stuff often comes with some complexity. So, yeah. There's other Sunburst cards are, generally speaking, really poorly costed. Like, Suncrusher is one of the rare payoffs for Sunburst. 9 mana for a Sunburst 3/3. So, if you get all 5 colors in your 9 mana, you make it an 8/8. It has 4 mana and tap it to remove a +1/+1 counter from it to destroy target creature. Fine. And 2 mana and remove a +1/+1 counter from it to return it to its owner's hand. Really pretty bad, but also very cool. Solarian, another rare Sunburst payoff. 7 mana for just a Sunburst card, so at most a 5/5. And then you can tap it to double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. This is a very cool card here. I think it's bad, but here's where I have to make the decisions about what power level I want to play at, because Solarian is very cool. I also have all of the prototype cards in here. These are the spells from Brothers War that you could play as big colorless spells or as cheap colored spells, and it's a perfect mechanic for this cube because if you're in white, you probably take Combat Thresher pretty highly, but if you get Combat Thresher late and you're like a green-red deck, you can still main deck it. It's still fine. And those are the kinds of cards that I'm excited about where you have this flexibility of how you can play them. But comparing any prototype card to something like Solarian, it is a stark contrast in terms of the power level of those cards. Like, Combat Thresher is at its baseline a 7 mana 3/3 with double strike that draws you a card on ETB compared to a 7 mana at most 5/5 that can get bigger, but can also just get shattered. I don't know quite where I'm going to be yet, and this is where the focus cards are really important to identify because that's going to help dictate our power level. I don't feel confident in yet saying that I want to make either of these a focus. I don't love Solarian and Suncrusher enough to make them the focus and not play anything like Combat Thresher or Steel Seraph or whatever because I want to make these cards still playable. But I don't feel strong enough about either of those. I do have other threats I do feel strong enough about, so we're going to basically follow those as our sort of setting power level standards as the sort of flag we're going to set in the ground. But let's keep going through white. There's a difference between, I guess, focuses and cards I know for sure I'm going to run, and maybe Prismatic Ending and Savin's Reclamation fit more into this, I know for sure I'm going to run it category, but how much of a build-around is it? Dispeller's Capsule is for sure going to be in this cube. It fits every single design goal by every metric. The fact that it's a small artifact, the fact that it removes artifacts and enchantments, which are going to be very prevalent in this cube. It recurs with Ariok Salvagers. It procs Tashar, it can be fetched up with Oswald Fiddlebender. That's the perfect card, but I don't think I need to flag that as a focus because it's not going to really inform other cards that I add to the cube. Maybe I should make a second tag. What would that be? Like a staple or a I'm gonna make it here. I'm gonna make a second tag, and I'm gonna at least Prismatic Ending is a good example. This is not actually a focus. This is gonna be like a Locked in. There we go. We're going to call it locked in. I'm going to save my changes again so that tag will also now autocomplete. I think locked in is better. I think Savins is actually a focus. I think all the eggs are actually focuses, but now we can say Dispeller's Capsule is locked in. Yeah, just a good staple that I know for sure I'm going to include. Probably Basilica Spellbomb. It depends on how many trinkety artifacts I end up wanting. This is the other thing that's important to think about this phase of labeling focuses. I want to basically label all of my focuses and get a sense of my themes, and then figure out a rough idea of density to support each of these themes, and then that will inform whether or not I play things like Basilica Skullbomb, right? If I have enough trinkety artifacts to support what I want to be a trinkety artifact theme, I won't need to include kind of more fringe, less exciting ones like Basilica Spellbomb, but I might end up being there nonetheless. Other focuses, I am really excited about Chivalric Alliance here. This is, I think, one of the more powerful cards that I'm going to label as a focus. It's quite strong. 2 mana for an enchantment. When you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. Already okay, but then you can also pay 2, add instant speed, discard a card to make a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. I just love this card. It allows you, again, to do something with off-color cards. Discarding is going to be a huge theme here because that's one of the things you can do with off-color cards or cards you otherwise can't cast. So it is the rare discard outlet in white, which is huge, and also just an incredible card unto itself. I just wanted to play this card in other cubes, but the unique token, the 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance, means that I'm just not willing to play it in other cubes. So this is the place to play a card like this for me, and that's going to start to set some power level things. Like, does Chivalric Alliance ever play alongside a card like Solarian in the same cube where they're both mutually playable? I kind of doubt it, but this is the card I'm excited enough about to make it a focus. I'm also feel the same way about Astral Slide. This is, I think, for sure going to be a focus. I love Astral Slide. It's one of my favorite cards of all time. It is going to pay off, obviously, all the cycling stuff in this cube. There's going to be a lot of cycling. Cycling, again, allows you to do things with off-color cards or cards you otherwise can't play. And there's going to be other themes this also incidentally has a nice overlap with. So Astral Slide plus Morph, for example. Morph, another way for you to play off-color cards in your deck. Now you can also Astral Slide them, flip them face up, and either cheat mana if the cost to unmorph is really expensive, or just unmorph a off-color card in your deck. You have a white cycling deck. You can play any morph you draft, and you can always turn it face up with Astral Slide and just have whatever the other side of the card is. So I'm excited about that one. I'm less excited about Astral Drift. It's obviously, redundancy for Astral Slide, but it's also like modern design, templating, and just better in general. I like the idea of being more janky. You got to work for it. Astral Slide does nothing unless you then cycle some cards. Astral Drift, you can cycle itself and get one trigger, which makes it much more main deckable, which I'm less excited about. A card I'm on the fence about being a focus is Spirit Cairn. This is one of the rare discard payoffs for white. This also works with cycling, because cycling includes discarding. And whenever a player discards a card, you can pay 1 to make a 1/1 white spirit creature token. I think I'm gonna make this a focus. This just feels good to me too. It is symmetrical, but again, this is the kind of cube where I'm okay with some complexity in something like Spirit Cairn being symmetrical. Part of the reason I'm labeling this as a focus is I can tell you right now, a card that's going to be too good, I'm almost certain, is going to be Drakehaven. I love Drakehaven, but 1 mana for a 2/2 Drake compared to 1 mana for a 1/1 Spirit, and this is a colored mana, which is going to be much harder to come by here than the colorless mana of Drakehaven. I think Drakehaven would just be dominant, and I don't want that to happen, and so I think this is probably going to be more of a Spirit Cairn cube than a Drakehaven cube. Any of these colored lands I feel strong enough about to make a focus? I don't really think so. If anything, it's Flagstones of Trocaire. Because I don't want lands to be a scarce resource here. I don't want you to have to really stress about hitting enough lands to be able to cast any spells in your deck. I expect decks to have more lands than they'd otherwise have. Also, lands are kind of always playable, right? Even if I have a completely off-color land, that's still just a waste in my deck. If I'm, playing black-red and I get a late Flagstones of Trocaire, I will still play it over a spell I can't cast, probably, unless I provide enough ways for you to make use of the spells you can't cast. But because I'm going to have more lands, I think, and they're easier to main deck, I'm also imagining having quite a few ways to sacrifice lands. So I'm actually going to go ahead and make this a focus as well. Ways to sacrifice lands also are going to work really nicely with the eggs effects. If I can sacrifice lands and then bring them back with one of these brought back Second Sunrise face reward, then sometimes I can be positive on mana because I sacrifice lands. bring him back untapped. That can be quite good. And Flagstones is just a really cool land that I've always wanted a place to play. There's a lot of future sight cards in this cube. This is almost a future sight cube when it comes down to it, based on how many things are going on here. So a couple staples of like just basic interaction that are not like going to inform your deck building, but are going to be very playable. I think it's pretty safe to call Forsake the Worldly also locked in. It cycles for colorless and is, again, interaction for artifacts and enchantments, of which there are going to be quite a few in this cube. I'm questioning making something like Lion Sash. That's going to be really strong. I think Scavenge Use is going to be locked in, but I don't think I'm going to lock in Lion Sash just yet. Weather Wayfarer, some of these I took from other people's cubes because I didn't get the original printings, and I want the original printings of all these cards because it looks much cooler. Avenger and Doll is a cool Spell Shaper in white. Spell Shapers are a cool way to get discard outlets in white, too. I mentioned that white didn't have a lot of discard outlets when I was talking about Chivalric Alliance, and Spell Shapers are one of the only ways you actually have to do it. Ingenious Smith is going to be probably a nice, safe staple card. I'm going to be conservative about flagging these cards. There's already quite a few things in white. White already has a bit of an identity. I want to get a bigger picture before I start marking things as more, marking more cards as committal. All right, on to blue. I think we can pretty safely... First of all, Magus of the Bazaar is a perfect card here. Bazaar of Baghdad would be too good in this cube, so I think that's right out. But a 2-mana 0/1 Bazaar of Baghdad that you have to untap with is, I think, exactly what we want. Again, we're going to take the Planar Chaos version here because it looks much cooler. Yeah, there's basically, I think Bones actually said this is like the Bazaar deck without the Bazaar, and I think that is true. I have so many things that matter in the graveyard because I want you to have off-color creatures that you can play in your deck that have value to be discarded, that stuff in the graveyard is very easy to get back or do other, or have other sort of benefits from. And so I think Magus of the Bazaar would be quite good here. In the same way, I think like Merfolk Looter, this is just locked in. Like it's not a focus because it is not as sort of flavorful as Magus of the Bazaar. Like Magus of the Bazaar is like the reason, I guess the way to think of the focus is like the focus is the reason this cube exists. There's a million cubes you can play Merfolk Looter in. There's a million cubes you can play Prismatic Ending in. They're not focuses. Magus of the Bazaar, Oswald Fiddlebender, Ariok Salvagers, Chivalric Alliance. These are the reasons to build this cube. It is like the thing that make this cube what it is. More cool Spell Shapers to think about later. Ret Tomb Mystic is another card I'm going to call a focus for now. Parker thinks this card is too free in that it makes all of your off-color creatures, cycle for 1 and a blue. I just don't think you're going to, you can't just play a bunch of off-color creatures because you have one copy of Ret Tomb Mystic in your deck. And hope to make that work. So you're just not going to draw the Ret Tomb Mystic sometimes. You have his off-color creatures in your hands. I don't think it's going to make things free. I will say I do love Ret Tomb Mystic here just because it, again, makes those off-color cards do something. I think I'm going to go ahead and make the Step Through, which has Wizard Cycling, which can go find Ret Tomb Mystic, also a focus. And this is an important card to mark as a focus because I want... Do I want the old frame version? Yeah, probably. I want this to be a known focus because the Wizard Cycling is colorless, which means I would want to include enough wizards in other colors that you're not just always playing Step Through to get some blue wizard and sometimes bounce 2 things. I want there to be a reason to play that in a non-blue deck, which is a thing I want to be aware of and conscious of as I'm going through. Riddlesmith, great example of a card that is also probably a focus here. It fits right into that sort of cheap artifact deck. So come on, autocomplete. Thank you. Strong. Bazaar Trade Mage, compared to something like Magus of the Bazaar, not as exciting to me. It obviously does the same thing, but it also gives you a huge body that body is kind of all that matters. Magus of the Bazaar, what matters is what you're drawing and discarding. This is more just like a downside that you can turn into an upside, but you get a 3/4 flyer out of it, which I'm not that excited about. Kind of same goes for Champion of Wits. This is a great card. It does what I want it to do. It's also reasonable in the graveyard, but it's also just kind of generically quite strong. You don't need to be caring about what you discarded to make this card worth it. So I'm off of those a little bit for now. I'm extremely on Emery. Emery is another focus. As you can see, artifacts is going to be a big theme here. Emery is so cool. It mills things over, which is going to be great for all the stuff that's in the graveyard that matters. Obviously, Magus of the Bazaar and Emery is a very cool combination. And then obviously all these trinkety artifacts that are going to self-sacrifice, you can keep bringing them back. That's going to rule. I'm thinking hard about Laboratory Maniac here. This is like, I think this is likely going to be a Laboratory Maniac cube. I'm not ready to commit yet, but I think it's likely going to be. I think that's a cool sort of alt-win condition to give people access to. Psi, a good example of another artifact payoff. I feel less excited about this one because, well, it does have the sacrifice to artifacts draw a card. That's really good with the brought back and things. I don't know. I'm not going to quite label Psi a focus because I think the vibes are not quite there. Compared to something like Volrath's Shapeshifter, this is for sure a focus. I do kind of hate that you have to care about graveyard order, but this will turn into any creature in your deck. This is like Red 2 Mystic, but cool. And I know people might say I should not play Red 2 Mystic for that reason, but I don't know. I think Red 2 Mystic is still the right vibes. This is an old card. As long as the top card of your graveyard is a creature card, it is a copy of that creature. So you got to care about graveyard order, which is a bummer. Actually, if we're going to care about that at all, can I just add Phyrexian, not Phyrexian. Yeah, Phyrexian, what's the Scrabbling Claws? Phyrexian Furnace. Is it Phyrexian Furnace? Yeah, the Scrabbling Claws that cares about graveyard order. That's a cool card, which I'm going to add here. It fits all the other themes. Oh, also, I think I forgot to add, what's the Jeweled Amulet? That's going to go here too, for sure. All right. Anyway, Volrath's Shapeshifter is just like cool not Riddlesmith, Red 2 Mystic. And maybe I'll decide Red 2 Mystic is too good someday and too generically good and just be more about the Volrath Shapeshifter. But either way, that's going to get included. Really love Fate Stitcher here. I am tempted to even mark this a focus. It's awesome that you can unearth it and get essentially one untap of something. And if you have a turn where you're going off, you can maybe have some sort of cool combos with it. Master Transmuter, very close to being a focus as well, but I don't know if I'm fully ready to commit. It allows you to sort of swap an artifact and play with an artifact in your hand. I do like the idea of having like a more slow but like cheating deck. I'm gonna skip it for now, but it's close. Any of these other creatures here, I do love these other cards. I put all these cards here because I love them, or I think they sort of make sense with the themes, but we got to be a little selective here with what we mark. I'm going to stick with Volrath, Shapeshifter, Riddlesmith, Red 2 Mystic, Magus the Bazaar as our focuses. Brainstorm, great example of a card that is just locked in. There's going to be things that care about the top of your library. I just like card selection, and that one is really good. I think it's honestly pretty safe to lock in something like Miscalculation as well. Generic Cycler, that's also pretty good interaction, the kind of stuff I love. Circular Logic, just a card I love here. I'm locking this in for sure as well. That's the kind of counterspell I want to be good. Frantic Search, honestly, also locked in. There's a lot of kind of pretty easy slam dunk interactive things over here. Let's see. Gifts Ungiven and Intuition. I don't like this version at all. Let's get the good version in here. And let's also add Intuition while we're here. These cards, I think, are very cool in this context. Gifts Ungiven and Intuition. I don't know if I'm ready to lock them in just yet. I think same goes for Paradoxical Outcome. I love that Paradoxical Outcome allows you to, there's lots of cool ways you can actually make this good. You don't have to be playing, what you think of as like a vintage PO deck where you're playing lots of cheap artifacts and bouncing it back to your hand. You can have other things with ETBs. Like, it's just a cool value card, and I want this to be the kind of janky environment where you Paradoxical Outcome like, your 4-drop because it has a good ETB. I think, comfortable calling this a focus as well. We will see where that leads us. Fervent Denial and Traumatic Visions. Definitely a Traumatic Visions cube. The basic land cycling is obviously very good here, and 5-mana counterspell is the kind of thing I also want to be occasionally relevant here. So I'm going to mark a Traumatic Visions as a focus. And that's more of like a power level focus rather than a thematic focus, right? Like, I want this card to be playable. And so that informs how many other, cheap counterspells I can play, or how many, big, huge threats are. Like, you want to have big, expensive cards that are worth paying 5 mana to counter for that to be a playable card. Careful Study is for sure just locked in. Such good looting. Sweep Disguise is a really interesting one I found. This is another Converge spell that makes 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens for each color spent to cast it. I'm not going to mark this a focus quite yet, but that's really up there for me. Let's see. Exert influence, Boon of the Wishgiver. Boon of the Wishgiver pretty confidently locked in as well. Aether Spell Bomb, locked in. This is just like a Speller's Capsule. It's just so good. What's that? What's the Cryogen Relic? Yeah, Cryogen Relic. I should probably add that as well. That is what I'm thinking it is, right? The blue mana card that, yeah, that's going to be locked in too. You can't tag a card when you're adding it, which is a small frustration of mine. Another great focus, Artificer's Intuition, for sure a focus. This is Survival of the Fittest for artifacts. Well, not quite. You discard it from your hand and you can get a converted mana cost 1 or less. It's got to be small artifacts. You can't just get anything. But it's Survival of the Fittest for small artifacts, which is quite good. Survival of the Fittest itself may be too good here. I'm going to mark it a focus anyway for now, but I imagine a world in the future where maybe what we're doing with survival here is just too good, and that needs to go. But both of these are discard outlets, obviously, for uncastable things in your hand, whether they are artifacts or creatures, and then which you go find castable things. Now, do I want to mark Dragon Wings and Dragon Breath and Dragon Fangs all as focuses? I kind of do. These are cheap little auras that have cycling, all of them, I believe, right? Oh, I'm sorry, just the blue one has cycling. The other ones, do not have cycling. This one I think is going to get in for sure because of the cycling. Cheap little auras that have some effect. The blue one gives flying, the red one gives fire breathing, and the green one gives trample and +1/+1. But when a creature mana value 6 or greater comes into play, they come from your graveyard onto that creature automatically, which means they can also just be discarded for value, or in Dragon Wings' case, cycled for value. And then if you have something like Oath of Druids, which is also another focus here, imagine you have a deck that has those auras, Oath of Druids in it, and just a creature's mana value 6 or greater. Any of those you mill over in the process of triggering your Oath of Druids that you then hit a 6-drop on will just come into play automatically. I think they're cool enough that I want them to be focuses. I want these to be the kind of janky cards you can play here, which is going to, again, inform the power level we end up going for. The fire breathing is especially interesting because making red mana here is going to be additionally difficult, so kind of into that. These are also just cards you don't see played in other cubes. They're the kind of thing I want to be able to do here. I'm tempted to make a tag for like probably too good and put it on Drakehaven. Let's do that, actually. I'll call it like the watch list or probation. I think Jane uses the probation terminology. Maybe I'll go for that. Let's make it this symbol. On probation. All right, once again, I'm going to save this so that I can have that tag autocomplete here. And I'm going to also tag Survival of the Fittest on probation as well, because I'm worried about that card. As you can see, you get both emojis there. It's nice. It's good. You can see what's going on. We also have a sort of yellow theme in our emojis right now, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, Dragon Wings, I think very cool. Trade Routes, another focus card here. This allows you to use all your extra lands to just turn into more cards. The land bounce could be particularly good. I'm imagining playing ways to play multiple lands a turn. I want this to be a Trade Routes cube for sure. So that's that. Let's see here. What else we got? Primordial Mist, very cool. Probably too good. And New Perspectives is a potentially big payoff for the cycling. This was recommended by Jane. Potentially big payoff for the cycling deck. It's also a 6 mana draw 3. I'm not sure about that just yet, but I'm also not going to mark it as on probation just yet either. Are there any blue lands I really want to focus on? I love Teleria West. This is a cool focus land here. Tutor for any 0 mana cost spell makes you really want to include a toolbox of 0 mana cost spells in your deck that are not lands, just 0 mana cost spells of some kind. So I really like that one. That's very cool. That's blue. Let's go on to black. So I can tell you that like Gravecrawler here is definitely just going to be locked in. There's ways to discard things for value. There's going to be a lot of incidental zombies. That's definitely going to happen. Let's see here. The Vault Scourge should be a 1 mana colorless. I'll try to move these as I added them, but I missed that one. We'll come back to that in a second. I think Bloodghast is also going to be locked in. There is a lands theme. There is a discard theme. There is a graveyard theme. That is everything you want Bloodghast for. The first actual focus in black, though, is going to be Hakon, Stromgald Scourge. This is just a card I'm obsessed with. 3 mana for a 3/3 legendary creature zombie knight. You may play Hakon Stromgald Surge from your graveyard, but not from anywhere else. You may not cast this spell from your hand. You must discard it, entomb it, mill it over, something to get to cast it. As long as it's in play, you can play night cards from your graveyard, which is very cool, and also very cool with a couple of like changeling spells, so that rules. And when it's put into a graveyard from play, you lose 2 life, so you can't just, infinitely. It kind of stops any infinite combos that you could potentially brew up, which wouldn't happen here, but it also just means that if you're like chump blocking with Hakon every single turn against their big creature, you are losing life as it happens. You can't just like indefinitely chump block. A perfect card. It's gorgeous. I love it. Exactly the kind of card I want to be playable here. It's got Future Sight vibes almost. It's so weird. That is for sure a focus of mine in black. I think that card is incredibly cool. I wish you could see the... Oh, see? I messed up the emoji tag. Boop. Awesome. Love that card. I think Undead Gladiator's also going to be a focus, or maybe even just Locked In. I'm going to call this Locked In. This is a discard outlet. It is a cycling card. It is a weird old zombie barbarian. It does everything. I'm sticking that in here for sure. Bane of the Living, another great focus card. This is, I think I mentioned in the previous video, I don't want there to be like all-in themes, except for like artifacts and cycling. For the most part, I want like things to be lightly sprinkled in. So like Morph is a great mechanic for this cube, because again, you can play this in a colorless deck as just a 3-mana 2/2, or in a deck that's not black, it's just a 3-mana 2/2, or it's a really big payoff for having some black in your deck to flip it up. It's also one of my favorite morph cards. So I don't want there to be like a morph theme, but I want there to be some morph sprinkled in, like my favorite morph sprinkled in, and then, yeah, being able to combine that with something like a Astral Slide just to flip it up into a 4/3. Very cool. I just love Bane of the Living. Another sick card for that deck. Tormod the Desecrator. I wish just, even though I'm like fine with some inelegance here, as I mentioned, this having partner really irks me, and I don't love it. So Bridge from the Below, I'm happy to mark as a... Where's Bridge from Below? Enchantments. This is for sure a focus. I don't think the creature version is going to be a focus, but Bridge from Below, great card. It doesn't work in almost any cube, but I think will be quite good here. The lands theme is going to cause a lot of overlap with like the Life from the Loam cube. So I looked a little bit at the Loam cube for this, for inspiration here too. And this just, yeah, pays you off for putting non-token creatures from your graveyard, put into your graveyard from play. So sacrificing things gives you zombie tokens, and I want that to be good here. I think it's very cool and sweet and a weird, funky build around. Moving on, I think Archfiend of Ifnir is likely to be on probation. Probably too good. Bone Miser, similarly, it's a discard payoff. Is it too good? 5-mana 4/4 that just spits out all kinds of crap. Probably too good. It's just like kind of got, modern design mind rot. Cavalier of Night is a card I found specifically good with Hakon, because when it enters the battlefield, it has ability, so you can, cast it, sacrifice another creature, and then destroy target creature and opponent controls. And if you have a sack outlet, you can just cast this turn over turn with Hakon, which is pretty cool. I guess you could sacrifice Hakon the first. Yeah, I don't know, but it's probably just too good, generically speaking. Griel Mindraker, one of the coolest spell shapers. I don't think the one I want to call a focus yet, but it's cool. Marshland Broadcaster, a way to sort of get around having to pay off-color mana for things. Sir Conrad would be incredible here. I want to talk a little bit about a life gain theme. What is it that originally inspired me for the life gain theme? I think, honestly, it was Deathless Knight, which is a crazy card to have inspire your life gain theme. That's going to be in the hybrid section. Yeah, so here, I was looking at hybrid cards, came across Deathless Knight. It's 4 hybrid black-green for a 4/2 with haste, and when you gain life for the first time each turn, you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. That second bit is why I'm most excited about this, because if you had a deck that could gain some life, then you could use this as a repeated discard outlet. The card I'm most excited about combining this with is Art of Enchantments down here, Call the Bloodline. So for example, imagine combining Call the Bloodline with Deathless Knight. You discard Deathless Knight to make a 1/1 creature token with lifelink. Whenever you gain life, you put this back in your hand, you discard it, you keep doing it over and over again. That's a very cool thing. I kind of want to be something here. I think I'm actually happy to mark both of these as focuses. And just to say it's a focus, we could always change our mind about this, right? I'm not saying these cards are for sure going to be in the, the cube, the first version of the cube I build in paper, but they're cards that I'm currently focused on. I missed one, though. I do want to focus on Soul Flayer. This card rules. I was inspired by Ryan, who Ryan Overturf on Twitter was talking about the Soul Flayer Chromanticore combo, which was apparently a thing in Modern for a little while. I think Modern, maybe it was Standard or something. This is a cool card. Delve is good with all the stuff you're discarding and exiling, or discarding or milling over to your same thing, and then you can also get paid off for combining it with weird weird keyword abilities on cards. So that rules. Crick, Son of Yawgmoth. This is actually mana value 4, and this is absolutely a focus. So cool here. Yeah, it's also not even black. It is kind of black, I guess, because no, I'm gonna make it colorless. No, I think it's black. I care so much about black spells. I'm going to keep it in the black section, but such a cool way to get around colored mana requirements. And then it's a life gain card for the cards we just talked about. I think a sort of life gain theme is something I hate life gain. If you watch my other videos, listen to my podcast, you know that I am not a life gain gamer, but this might be a cube to explore that in this sort of weird context where casting your spells is hard. Maybe it's okay to gain some life there. This card also, just on pure vibes alone, I think Vorarth the Fallen has to be included. There's going to be some element of Reanimator, I imagine, in this cube. I don't want it to be too cheap and easy because there's going to be so many discard outlets that it would be free. That deck would just be very strong. This is the kind of card I want you to be reanimating, though, if you have any reanimation targets. A 6 mana 6/4 that can get +S/+X where you discard a creature card. It's also just sick art. That's a cool card. Suture Ghoul, very close to being a focus here, but probably not. Entomb is going to be locked in. And this is why I don't want that Reanimator deck to be too good, right? Because I do want Entomb to be here, mostly because I want you to entomb weird stuff. I want you to entomb your Deathless Knight for your Call of the Bloodline combo, or I want you to entomb your Life from Alone to do something funky with it. I don't want you to just entomb some giant bomb and then reanimate it. So I got to be careful of that, but that's definitely locked in. Nameless Inversion is also going to be locked in for me. Not a focus because it's not going to affect other card selections, but cheap removal that is a Wombo combo with Hakon Stromgald Scourge. Just love those kinds of interactions. That's what I'm going for here. Shadow of the Grave is focus, locked in. Doesn't really matter which one I choose, but obviously lots of cycling and discarding going on. The idea of discarding a bunch of cards to Zombie Infestation, for example. Let's mark another card as a locked in. Discarding your whole hand to Zombie Infestation, then getting them all back with Shadow of the Grave. Oh, very sick. Love it. Very cool. The original art on SWAT is so good. I'm happy to call this locked in too. This is the reason for this season, you know? All right. Cabal Therapy, cool. I really like the retrace spells. I added them all in the first version of this list because, again, you're going to have more than normal numbers of lands, and I want ways to mitigate flood. And so I think Raven's Crime is also a pretty confident lock at this point. Happy to say that. Obviously, regular discard outlets that can discard creatures are also going to be ways to mitigate flood because you can just discard the extra lands if you have discard abilities, but special ways to specifically care about lands like Raven's Crime I think is kind of cool. Buried Alive also locked in for all the same reasons that Entomb is locked in, though it can only get creatures, so it's a little less flexible and cool, but the idea of Buried Aliving, Squee and Oval Chase Daredevil. Let's go ahead and just mark a couple of these cards. These are all going to be focuses for sure. Squee, focus. This is what this cube is about. I might even take my Mercadian Mask's foil out of my old Goblin EDH deck for this cube. Oval Chase Daredevil, focus. That is what this cube is about. The idea of Buried Aliving a bunch of these cards instead of Vengevine, pretty okay on rate, 4 mana, 4/3 haste, but it does cost double green. I'm going to call it a focus here too. You can see why Bones was calling this cube everything but the Bizarre Baghdad. Anyway, the idea of entombing all those cards and then just starting to get them back for free is very cool. This is one of the best suggestions from Jane. This is probably my favorite suggestion anybody has given me over the past week, which is Gigapede. 5 mana for a 6/1 with Shroud. At the beginning of your upkeep, if it's in your graveyard, discard a card from your hand. If you do, return Gigapede to your hand. So sick. I'm also, I think, pretty comfortable calling Death of a Thousand Stings also a focus. This is another card you can get back from your graveyard for free, but only if you have more cards in hand than each opponent. It's also repeated life gain, which this is where that sort of Deathless Knight, thing starts to come in. I think Death of a Thousand Stings can be very cool here. The idea of you actually casting Death of a Thousand Stings to recur your Deathless Knight is exactly what I want this cube to be. I'm obsessed. Speaking of a couple more cards that are just locked in, good old Phyrexian mana cards are for sure getting locked in here. Dismember is going to be like one of the best removal spells. I'm certain of it, but I mentioned I want life totals to be going down. All these cards are going to be really strong, but I like that they're going to cost you life. I'm also going to make some of the less premier Phyrexian mana cards like Tezzret's Gambit also locked in. Just a divination any deck can play, and there's going to be a lot of counters floating around as well. I also like that in this cube. I think a problem with Gitaxian Probe, because he's playing tons of cubes, is that a lot of players that are not paying a lot of attention see it as a blue card. It visually looks like a blue card, but it's not actually blue. This is the kind of cube where I expect players to be paying attention to that, paying attention to whether or not they can play any off-color cards, so I think they're more likely to see a Gitaxian Probe or Tezzret's Gambit and know they can in fact play it and take it for their deck. Dread Return, locked in. This is a focus for sure. Love this card. Being able to cast it in a deck without black mana, great. And also a 4-mana Zombify is the rate I want regular reanimates to be anyway. Obsessed with that card here. All right, Faith of the Devoted, the least exciting payoff for cycling, but it does trigger the life gain stuff. I don't like it emotionally, so I'm going to hold off on that for now, but I am aware of it. More sort of payoffs for things. Feast of Sanity. So this is like Feast of Sanity I like honestly a lot more than Faith of the Devoted for the same thing. It's only one life. You don't have to pay mana for it, and it sort of triggers on all the... Actually, I'm going to go ahead and just mark this focus too. It's so cool. It triggers on all the things that are not... I guess this is cycle or discard as well, right? It is. But because you have to pay for it, like, you can't really, Zombie Infestation, discard your hand, trigger Feast of Sanity a bunch, get it all back with the Shadow of the Grave. Like, that works with Feast of Sanity. It doesn't really work with Faith of the Devoted because you have to pay each time, so it would be kind of slow. World Weary, this sort of basic land cycling cycle is, I think, locked in here. A removal spell that also, cycles to fix your mana is good. Are there any black lands I really want to draw attention to? I love Tomb of Theorami. This is, sacrifice the lands you control. Yeah, you can do this, and then you need a lot of mana, but if you had this, you could then Second Sunrise all your lands back into play, which could be very cool. Yeah, and also just lands that deal damage to you I'm very into, like Cabal Pit. I'm going to go ahead and say locked in. A lot of these lands are probably locked in just by virtue of the fact that I'm going to need a lot of lands. So, I think I can pretty safely call Cephalid Coliseum also locked in. The sort of threshold lands that deal damage to you when you tap them for mana are pretty much great across the board. Barbarian Ring, famously one of my favorite cards of all time. That's black. Let's check out red here. So... this is just locked in. This card does everything you could ever want a Magic card to do in any cube. Please, I'm so embarrassed about how badly I'm typing these tags. I keep moving my hand between my mouse and my keyboard, and my mic's a little bit in the way. I'm making excuses here. Goblin Welder, yeah. This is a great example of, I want this to be a focus because I do not want the Goblin Welder deck to be broken. I want Goblin Welder to be playable. I don't want you to just be, putting... absolutely busted game-winning things into play on turn 2 reliably. So that means that I have to be conscious of Goblin Welder when looking at balancing the artifacts because I want them to be, reasonable things, reasonable payoffs for Goblin Welder. Pretty confident calling Goblin Engineer also a payoff here, or a focus rather, because of all the sort of cheap, dinky little artifacts that are going to be running around. Volatile Wanderglyph is a cool example of, it's an artifact for all the artifact matter stuff. It's a discard outlet. It cycles you through your deck, but not as elegant as Scrapwork Mutt, so it's not locked in. Archmage, cool spell shaper, just a shock, or rather a Chandra's Pyrohelix that you can cast by discarding a card. Feldon of the Third Path, very cool. Not this version. Really, none of these versions are cool. Actually, there's a promo that actually is kind of cool. Yeah, that one. That one's kind of cool. I'm going to call Feldon a focus here as well. I also am starting to detect a little bit of a tap to activate abilities theme, like a lot of tapped activated ability creatures. We talked about a Phaedo Alchemist, or maybe we didn't. Phaedo Alchemist is something I've considered here because it's a good morph that you can then do something with. I mentioned Fate Stitcher. I know I mentioned that. The idea of, Fate Stitcher, a Phaedo Alchemist, alongside stuff like Feldon of the Third Path or some Spell Shapers, I think that might be a thing eventually. I'm not actually sure, but I think it might be. This, I'm going to go ahead. Anger is so cool. Focus for sure. Exactly the kind of thing I want you to be entombing or buried aliving or whatever. Latula allows you to cast a Fireball. It's a spell shaper, discarding 2 cards. Galvanoth is a funky card. Ruin Grinder, maybe a little too good on rate. Lightning Axe, good example of a card that is going to be in here for sure. We're going to call that locked in. Good discard outlet, good cheap removal. Great example here. So Shard Volley. I'm also going to lock this in. Because you're going to be playing more lands than usual, I like the idea of being able to Shard Volley to, make this a Lightning Bolt. There'll be no Lightning Bolt in this cube, but there will be a Shard Volley. And this also is a cool combo with the Flagstones of Trocaire, which gives you a Plains when you sacrifice it. So that's cool. Similar to this, like Cathartic Pyre, just, good locked-in removal. It's also good to start marking these ones so that I can filter by them and see, the fact that this draws and discards cards. So if you have uncastables in your hand, you can do that. Or if you need to discard for other reasons, you can do it. But also it's just cheap removal. It'll be good to be able to filter by that and see that, like, okay, my removal section is currently looking like, Shard Volley, Lightning Axe, Cathartic Pyre, Circular Logic. What else? We had SWAT was one we marked, right? Did we mark that as a... Yeah, we locked in SWAT and World Weary. These are all sort of... We start to get an idea of what the shape of our Nameless Inversion. We get the idea of like a shape of what our interaction is going to look like by doing that. I really want to run Punishing Fire alongside Grove of the Burn Willows here. It would be really strong. I just have to include enough... Grave Hate for that to be, I think, reined in maybe. That might be too good. I'm going to go ahead and mark that as on probation. But I want that to be good. Just not too good. We're going to see if we can balance it. And we're going to mark this as a focus. This is going in no matter what. I love all of the whole cycle of one-off feature site lands. Every single one of those is going in because they are so cool. The frame is so cool. This is, again, like basically a future site cube. So, yeah, focus. And then the Graven Cairns. I hate filter lands. I'm going to include one here because I like filter lands are actually kind of cool for this cube, given the restrictions on mana, but I don't like them play pattern-wise. They are very frustrating to have to, like, tap carefully. Either way. Punishing Fire in for now. Thinking about it. Fiery Temper is also just going to be locked in. It's really strong. There's a lot of discard outlets. It was actually, I looked at every single Madness card, and obviously Madness cards are great here. We already saw so many discard outlets, but there's not a ton of Madness spells I want to include, which is okay, because I don't want them to just be the best thing in the cube if there's that many discard outlets going on. But Fiery Temper, too sort of clean not to include. Fiery Fall, I think, 6 mana instant. Yeah, if I'm having 5 mana counter spells and, World Wearies, I think a 6 mana instant might be okay for a removal spell. So we're going to put that in there. This is locked in. Our cheap sort of iconic discard outlets are going to be good no matter what. Finale of Promise, very cool way to get around playing uncastable instants and sorceries in your deck. And also just a cool card I love. I'm happy to call this a focus. This casts a spell without paying its mana cost, so you can cast off-color stuff. You can, for example, cycle your Unearth or your SWAT in your deck with no black mana, and then play a Finale of Promise and cast them out of your graveyard for free. Love that. Very cool. This is going to be also locked in, this fight spell with cycling 1. Love that. Kaleidoscorch, I wish I didn't hate the name. It would be locked in if I didn't absolutely hate the name. Yeah, Magma Rift, great example of like another card. I'm going to go ahead and lock this in too, I think. The lands theme cares about that. The sacrifice theme cares about that. So that's just kind of like another Shard Volley. I will say I do want to include a minimal amount of face burn here, because I don't want people to get cheesed out if they lose a bunch of life to their pain lands or their Phyrexian mana. I want people to get like not Omega punished by that. So, we already got Radiant Flames marked there. Change of Fortune is a really good card. Discard your hand, draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. I think I'm going to go ahead and mark that as a focus too. Really good with the cycling stuff. It's kind of expensive, but it does churn through your deck. Mizzix's Mastery, another way to cast off-color instants and sorceries. I'm not as excited about that one, and it just seems like overloading that would be like game over. Throes of Chaos. This is maybe the one Cascade card I'm going to include, because your whole strategy can just be put this in your graveyard and then just cast it for the rest of the game. And there's something kind of charming about that to me. I don't love Cascade as a mechanic, and I think most of the other Cascade stuff I'm actually going to be off here. I mean, it does allow you to cast off-color stuff, obviously, but it's going to be such a coin flip as to whether you hit one of your off-color things that I think I'm kind of not that excited about it. Alchemist's Greeting. This is also one of the madness spells I'm going to include, I am pretty sure. Let's lock that in for now. I didn't mention, I am also going to lock in, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Living Death and Scrap Mastery are both going to be locked in. Ways to swap all creatures and/or artifacts from graveyard and play, which rewards you discarding stuff and churning through your deck to find them. I think they're very cool. Pirate Spell Bomb, locked in. That's the kind of removal we love to see. Footfall Crater is good. Molten Vortex, also good. I'm not going to mark any of these as locked in. This is also the kind of cycling payoff I'm willing to have. It's a shock for 1 when you cycle. Again, compare that to Drakehaven. Wind Drake versus a shock, 3-mana spell versus 1-mana spell. This is much more reasonable. This also only triggers on cycling, not cycling or discarding. Is there going to be enough cycling for that to be a payoff? I mean, I said Astral Slide was a focus, so I think I'm also happy to make this a focus as well. Make that a payoff for the cycling deck. Tectonic Reformation. Ugh, great. This is Ret 2 Mystic, but for lands. Each land card in your hand has cycling for a red. It also cycles for generic amounts of mana. Great, love it. I can't wait for someone to play Tectonic Reformation, cycle it for generic, then cast a Civilization Reclamation to put it back into play without having red in their deck. Well, then they can't cycle their lands. Never mind. That doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. This might be a Burning Vengeance cube. I'm not sure just yet. It could be. Are there any lands I want to be really excited about here? I think the red was actually one of the places I struggled to find lands I was excited about. Yeah, none of these are like something I'm in love with, so I'm not going to bother marking any of those as focuses. Moving on to green. Elvish Reclaimer is a focus. The land theme is a focus here. This is where we're going to start talking about a lot of land stuff. We already talked about Green Seeker. I also think I'm going to go ahead and make Sky Shroud Elite and Sky Shroud War Beast as focuses. They're just such cool old cards. They're like on theme for what I want to be doing. Aftermath Analyst certainly does all the stuff, probably a little too good. I don't love it. Like, I want to be a little more jankier than that. I want to be as janky as Fa'adiasir. That's what I want to be doing. So let's make that a focus as well. Sick. And the original card was Sinbad. Was a blue creature, I believe, with flying that did this. So that is a thing. Fauna Shaman is probably actually... I suspect Fauna Shaman will be fine, and Survival of the Fittest will be too good, in the same way that Magus the Bazaar is fine, but I think Bazaar of Baghdad would be too good. Love Hermit Druid here. It's going to be cracked, honestly. Very few basic lands floating around, and you can also draft a mana base that has even fewer of them. That's the kind of card that will make... I'm just go ahead. Lab Maniac is going to be a card here. I'm doing it. That's a focus, for sure. We talked about all the benefits from milling stuff already, and from having things in your graveyard. Hermit Druid is going to be really good. Scavenge Use, I'm just going to go ahead and lock in. It's more fair and reasonable than Lion Sash. So that's that. I don't know if I'm going to lock in Azusa just yet, but I am for sure going to lock in Terravor. This is what we want to be doing here. That's a focus. But Azusa could be very good as well. Mantuko Vigilante is, and also Anok Survivalist are both creatures that you can unmorph to destroy an artifact or enchantment. I suspect we'll end up playing those, but I'm not going to lock them in just yet. Same with Oracle Moldiah. Let's again get this awful version out of here. Give me the Zendikar version. I'm not going to lock it in just yet. Verdant Eidolon, a really cool suggestion of Jane's. 4 mana 2/2, pay a green, sacrifice it, add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. When you play a multicolored spell, you can return it to your hand. So you can do the sort of Deathless Knight, Oval Chase Daredevil thing, where you can just discard this for value. It's also really good with the Brought Backs and the Faith's reward, face reward, and second sunrises of the world. So I'm going to go ahead and call this a focus too. It's very cool. Love it. Genesis. So Joel Rail. This is probably the spell shaper I love the most. It cares about lands and is also just a very cool win condition. Discard 2 cards from your hand. Until end of turn, all lands target player controls are 3/3 creatures that are still lands. Very cool. Very into that. Actually, you know what? I don't think I have Rude Awakening in this list yet. I'm going to put it in here as well because I love that card, and I imagine this maybe be a Rude Awakening cube. But Jorel, very cool. Whisper Elemental is going to be too good, and the Manifest can be too random. Crossing Cloudscaper is a card I'm also kind of tempted to make a focus. Yeah, I am. This is so cool because it's a huge creature you could... Like, this is the kind of reanimation thing I want. If you want to reanimate Crossing Cloudscaper, go for it. You got to pay green on your upkeep to get any value out of it. So you got to have green in your deck for it to make sense. You can also play it as face down as a morph and then flip it up with Astral Slide to get one hit within it. Get one hit in with it. Or you can find ways to pay the green to keep it. It's very cool. Crop rotation, yeah, that's going to be a focus. We want ways to get our lands. We want ways to sacrifice lands. For sure into that. I can tell you right now, Repopulate actually going to be locked in. So many things care about the graveyard. This is the kind of graveyard I think is cool. It's got cycling, and it just shuffles them into their library. It doesn't exile them, so you get to keep doing the thing. You just got to do it later. Realms Uncharted, focus. Absolutely. This is intuition, but for lands only, or Gifts Ungiven, rather, but for lands only. And I think Collected Company, I may be happy to make a focus here as well. We'll see. I might regret that. Green Sun Zenith, not as much as Collected Company. As Court of Calling is not even in this list yet. We can make Court of Calling in here because, yeah, I like Court of Calling, and Court of Calling and Collected Company can get off-color creatures, which Green Sun Zenith obviously, well, I mean, it can, but they have to also have green in their mana or in their identity. Edge of Autumn, locked in for sure. Life from Alone, a focus. I think I want Gaia's Blessing to be locked in. / focus. Yeah, I want there to be a Gaia's Blessing control deck, and it's good with all the other things going on. Formless Genesis, I'm going to make this a focus and also put it on probation. 3 mana for a Changeling spell. So you can cast this from your graveyard with Hacken in play, because it's a knight. Create an XX colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling and Death Touch, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. It's also a payoff for the lands theme. It also just has Retrace, so you don't even need Hacken to cast it from your graveyard. I'm a little worried people's entire plan would just be to cast this over and over again and not do anything else. So that's why it's on probation, because that may not be the most fun thing to just do repeatedly without any other things going on. Scapeshift and Splendid Reclamation are, again, exactly what this cube is about. They are getting focuses for sure. Exploration, I'm not sure about. Prismatic Oming will have applications. Spelunking, I don't like the vibes on that. Centaur Garden, lock it in. I love these pain lands. What's the white one? Is it Gain Life or something stupid? Why don't I have the white one in my list? I'll look it up later. Dryad Arbor also locked in, or maybe even a focus. I love Dryad Arbor. That makes me really want to include Green Sun Zenith. The fact that I'm including Dryad Arbor because it turns Green Sun Zenith into a 1-mana rampant growth. Pendlehaven also a focus / locked in. These are the reasons I'm building this cube. Things like Pendlehaven and Dryad Arbor. I want them to be playable and great. All right, this video's gotten very long. It's already over an hour, so I'm going to call this here. We're going to come back, and the next video will be going through more of the colorless cards. I got some incidentally in there, but more of the colorless cards, and the gold cards and more lands, and talking about which ones are going to be focuses and locked in. And then we are going to filter the whole cube by... here's another feature request. I wish that... you could just see your tags here as like a list of tags. We can filter by focus and see that we've already got a lot of focus in green. It's a very focused color, pretty evenly distributed through the other colors of the cube. And we can start to get a shape of what we want this cube to look like. And this will inform which cards from the rest of that big spaghetti pile we end up leaving in the list. So we're going to do that in the next video after we go through all the colorless cards and all the gold cards. And we'll have a pretty good idea of where this cube is headed and where we have to fill in some gaps. All right. Let me know if this video is still entertaining and engaging. I think this is much better than the video I'm not going to publish of me just literally going through cards and just saying, cool, 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 cool. That's not that exciting. Here, I think you get to hear a lot more of my thought process behind what I am focusing on. And this is how I would design a cube like this. You're just seeing the design process in real time. We talked about the goals. You didn't see in real time me putting a bunch of cards onto the list, just throwing spaghetti at that wall. But this sort of review process of going through and analyzing the cards and deciding what we want the cube to be about, I'm doing that in real time. I hadn't really thought about these things until I sat down to make this video. So you're seeing it as we go. Tune in for the next video. Like I said, I'm in like the aggressive, very excited stage of designing this cube where I just keep thinking of ideas and keep coming back to this list and dumping things in there, and I can't stop thinking about it. So more videos to come soon. Like and subscribe.